The Chinese Communist Party has released a new white paper detailing its relations with Taiwan. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council ridiculed it as, quote, full of wishful thinking and lies that ignore the facts. Though the Chinese military exercises near Taiwan are complete, China plans to execute new ones starting Wednesday. The Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China Policy condemned the exercises and demanded China stop. A German parliamentary delegation will visit Taiwan in the first week of October. This is amid growing tensions with China. President Joe Biden signed the Chip and Science Act on August 9th. It aims to boost the competitiveness of the U.S. semiconductor industry, as well as counter competition from the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese newspaper Xinhua published praise for China's president, stating he had made great accomplishments in stopping COVID and boosting the economy. Multiple media from around the world have disproved this stance, as real events in China are far more dire. Finally, COVID outbreaks are worsening in China. The city of Sanya has a high infection rate, and Tibet is having an outbreak for the first time since 2020. Let's get into it. Welcome to Sound of Hope News. My name is Daniela Wolensack, and today is August 11th. On the same day, the Chinese Communist Party announced a formal end to military exercise in the Taiwan Strait. The CCP released its first white paper in over 2 decades, titled The Taiwan Question and China's Reunification in the New Era, on August 10th. The paper reiterates recent rhetoric from Chinese officials. The use of military force to take the island remains. It also blames Taiwan's independence-seeking ruling party for the heightened tensions with Beijing. The white paper serves as an update to previous white papers on Taiwan, issued by the Chinese Communist Party in 1993 and 2000. The new white paper states that we will not renounce the use of force, but that use of force would be the last resort taken under compelling circumstances. In the previous white papers, the Chinese Communist Party promised that Taiwan would enjoy autonomy. China also agreed to not send troops or administrators to Taiwan after the so-called unification was achieved. This promise fails to appear in the new white paper. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council ridiculed the new white paper as, quote, full of wishful thinking and lies that ignore the facts. A press release by the Taiwan Mainland Affairs Council argues against Beijing's claim for unification. It notes that the Chinese Communist Party has not ruled for even a single day over Taiwan. It also stated that Taiwan insists that neither side of the Taiwan Strait has jurisdiction over the other, and firmly rejects the one country, two systems principle. This is the status quo and the current reality in the Taiwan Strait. The Chinese Communist Party's military exercises around Taiwan have aroused serious concerns among the international community. The most recent exercises were in response to U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. The Eastern Theater Command arm of the Chinese military announced that the joint military tasks around Taiwan were successfully completed, but warned it would continue regular military exercises against the island on Wednesday. Reuters was told by a source briefed on the matter that as of the afternoon of August 11th, local time, the number of Chinese and Taiwanese warships staying near the center line in the Taiwan Strait was greatly reduced. However, earlier in the day, several Chinese fighter jets briefly flew over the central line of the Taiwan Strait. The IPAC, the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China Policy, issued a statement condemning China's military threats to Taiwan on August 9th. The statement also called on all countries to demand that China immediately stop its aggressive military activities. IPAC consists of 25 countries, including the United States, Japan, France, and Germany, as well as the European Parliament. It has 220 members of parliament from different political parties of the member countries. In its statement, IPAC noted that the current Chinese military's operations around Taiwan were the most provocative in decades. IPAC pointed out that the Chinese warplanes crossed the center line of the Taiwan Strait many times, and several ballistic missiles flew over Taiwan for the first time. Some missiles even landed in waters of Japan's exclusive economic zone. IPAC condemned the Chinese actions as irresponsible and dangerous. The statement urged democratic states to demand that China immediately cease the aggressive activities and allow for the reopening of international trade routes through the Taiwan Strait. A German parliamentary delegation will visit Taiwan in the first week of October. Their purpose is to show solidarity with the self-ruled democratic island amid growing threats posed by China in the Asia-Pacific region. German Social Democratic Party (SDP) leader Holger Becker told visiting Taiwanese legislators Fan Yun and Li Yiqin on Monday, now is the time for democracies to stand together. Becker has confirmed he plans to visit Taiwan in October. In response to Yun's query whether he worries about retaliation from Beijing, Becker stressed that he is not afraid of punishment from China. The German Parliament's Committee on Human Rights will also send a delegation of 8 lawmakers from 6 political parties to Taiwan at the end of October, according to German news agency dpa. On Monday, the Formosa Club in Europe issued a joint statement condemning Beijing and urging it to cease its military intimidation of Taiwan. 79 lawmakers from 28 legislative bodies in Europe and Canada vowed to stand by and support Taiwan through regular visits, joint dialogues, or cooperation. The group accused Beijing of undermining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and stated that lawmakers have the duty and right to travel internationally to support freedom, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs thanked the group for speaking out for the self-government island and encouraged democratic partners to visit it to show their support. Lithuanian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Gabrielius Landsbergis, wrote for the UK's Telegraph newspaper. He called on the world to safeguard global security instead of considering smaller democratic countries expendable to appease authoritarian countries. He added, appeasement does not lead to peace. President Joe Biden signed the Chip and Science Act on August 9th. It aims to boost the competitiveness of the U.S. semiconductor industry, as well as enhance U.S. industrial, technological, and military strength to counter competition from the Chinese Communist Party. This bill provides over $52 billion in funding for the research, development, and domestic manufacturing of semiconductors. It also authorizes an additional $200 billion for scientific research. The bill is intended to support the establishment of a secure and reliable semiconductor supply chain and nurture talent for the semiconductor industry. It also provides a number of incentives, such as a 25% tax credit for investment in semiconductor manufacturing. In addition, one of the most high-profile provisions of the bill prohibits companies that receive federal funds from significantly increasing production of advanced process chips in China for a decade. Companies that violate the ban may be required to return the full amount of the federal grant. In a speech before signing, Biden called the bill a once-in-a-generation investment in the United States. The future of the chip industry will be American-made. The Chinese embassy in the U.S. said it was resolutely opposed to the bill. The BBC reported that the CHIP Act's exclusionary policies against China's chip industry have put chip companies in the difficult position of choosing sides between China and the U.S. Speaking to Sound of Hope, Deputy Executive Director of Taiwan WTO and RTA Center said that Secretary of State Blinken in May this year set the tone for the future relations between the U.S. and China. The U.S. is investing in itself, competing strategically with the unfair trade practices of the Chinese Communist Party. According to Yen, the U.S. is passing the CHIP Act and promoting a U.S.-Japan-Taiwan-Korea alliance called the Chip 4 Alliance. Their goal is to form a democratic technology alliance for semiconductor production. It is to counter the totalitarian system led by China in the semiconductor industry. China's state-run Xinhua news agency praised the Chinese president's accomplishments in epidemic prevention and economic achievements on August 8th. Taiwan's official central news agency pointed out the contrary. It was exactly the CCP's zero-COVID policy that caused heavy damage to the economy and people's livelihood. Xinhua's article was clearly meant to restore Chinese President Xi Jinping's credibility and attempt to secure his re-election at the 20th National Congress. The New York Times reported that Xi is most concerned about the people's anger over the tough economic situation, and the CCP may become the target of a color revolution. The Xinhua article did admit that the epidemic situation and the international environment have been tricky this year. Stabilizing the economy has become challenging. The recent lockdowns in cities like Sanya and other places are causing instability. The New York Times mentioned several factors that are causing divisions within the Chinese Communist Party. The dynamic clearing COVID policy has put enormous pressure on China's economy and people's livelihood. China's stance on the Russia-Ukraine war has been criticized by the US and its allies. The Ukraine war also raised food and energy prices. When Xi visited the White House 10 years ago, New York Times said Xi was constantly talking about a color revolution and that it was clearly a forefront issue to him. Vice President for International Security and Diplomacy at the Asia Society Policy Institute, ASPI, Daniel Russell offered his observations. Beijing no longer distinguishes between internal and external stability. It is using all available tools to break down what it sees as choking problems. Other reports also mentioned that Beijing is now treating protecting national security as a war for all people. They want more than military involvement. Even grade school teachers and community workers are expected to participate in this war. COVID has surged in several Chinese provinces. On August 10th, the Chinese Communist Party's Health Commission said that the outbreak in Sanya, Hainan, is still an elevated risk, while the outbreaks in Xinjiang, Inner Mongolia, and Guangdong are at a rapid stage of development. COVID has also spread to Lhasa, Tibet. According to the official report of Hainan, there were 175 confirmed cases and 235 asymptomatic cases in Sanya on August 9th. From August 1st to 10th, Sanya reported nearly 2,000 confirmed and asymptomatic cases. On August 9th, 125 of the 80,000 passengers stranded in Sanya due to the sudden lockdown were allowed to return to Xi'an by air, but the vast majority of the passengers had to stay in Sanya. China's zero-COVID policy has been unsuccessful so far. An epidemic has broken out in Tibet, which has been epidemic-free since 2020. As of August 8th, a total of 2 confirmed cases and 20 asymptomatic cases were reported in Tibet. Although there were no new cases in the last 2 days, some areas in Tibet are still under strict control. All city staff are required to get nucleic acid testing, suspend religious activities, and stop people from entering or leaving the city. Thank you so much for listening to Sound of Hope News. If you like what you saw, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. See you tomorrow.